So what is the difference between pirates, PvPers, and griefers? Let's start with STL Youngblood.
Well, I think the primary difference between them is really their goals and what they're trying to accomplish. And then you look a little bit beyond that at their operating methods to accomplish their goals. At first look, you've got a legitimate gameplay, gameplay type being pirates, which I would actually say is essential to the game and being, something actually a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit more dangerous where you need help and smart play. Pirates are trying to accomplish something. They're trying to steal something from you. They're trying to exploit something from you, but they're not necessarily trying to use non-sanctioned gang methods to make that happen. As far as like PvPers, for example, these are people that really just want to, fight. They want to get into brawls with people, and they want to, test their skills, and that's where they find their fun. But they're not necessarily doing it with the goal of really having a negative impact on anybody's night or experience. So generally these are going to be your gentleman's agreements. You want to fight? Let's go. No missiles, like those types of coordinated, arranged type of engagements. That's generally what you see out of a PvPer. Now, there are PvPers that tend to kind of get more into the griefing category, which I think comes down to hunting the same player over and over again, or engaging in PvP with people that don't necessarily want it. That being said, that's kind of a fine line. I think when you look at just griefers as a whole, it's people that are trying to ruin your night, trying to ruin your experience in the game. And I think it's kind of the game equivalent of like an internet troll. They're trying to get under your skin. Now, the reason I said it was a fine line with PvPers is there are people that play in a combat role that will kill anybody. Their goal is not to exploit, their goal is not to get you to spend their money or give up your cargo. The pure goal there is to fight you, whether you want to fight or not. And whether that ends up being a griefer or not is just topic of hot debate on my Patreon Discord. We've got people on both sides of it. I tend to think that since the goal is really only I'm going to get what I want, I don't really care what you want. It leans a little bit griefing, but honestly, the verse isn't necessarily supposed to be a safe place, and I think that's kind of the point of what this video is kind of how do you deal with that sort of thing.
Well, you took my lines out from me, but that'll work. Drac, what is the difference between pirates, PvPers, and griefers?
Well, basically, I agree with STL Youngblood on most of what he said there. To me, pirates are usually an organized group that are trying to make money by working the dark side, stealing cargo. They're not actually out to get you, but they're out to get what you have. That's piracy. It's like organized crime syndicate. Organized crime doesn't do anything unless they're actually making a profit. Otherwise, they don't bother with it. PvPers, I agree with the gentleman's agreement and stuff, but there are some PvPers out there that just want to fight. And if they see you flying along in a fighter, they will attack you. And, that I don't see a real problem with. What I do see a problem with is somebody's flying along um, in a ship that doesn't have guns per se or something like that, and they go and they kill you and they say ha ha ha. That kind of tends more toward the griefing side, and downright griefers are the pad rammers, people that run in. You go to spawn a ship on a pad, and you run. They wait till you run out, get in your ship, and they destroy your ship before you get even powered up. That to me is griefing. They're the type of people that are out to say they're a good pilot just because they can kill you in an unarmed ship. To me, that's not right. But that's kind of my line on the whole thing.
So whether we like it or not, people are gonna come out to kill you. If they see you somewhere, if they find you, they might just assume they will kill you. So today we're gonna find out a few tips from STL Youngblood and Drac on how to keep yourself safe. So what are the general safety tips? Let's start with Drac on this one.
Okay, well, number one is know your ship. Know your ship, how to fly it, know what its capabilities are in space and atmosphere. Um, Basically, it's that right there can help you survive an attack, if especially if you're in atmosphere. If you know how to, if you know what your ship's capabilities are, you know if you need to keep on the deck or if you need to head to space as fast as you can. Look out for bounties. Basically, if you have the capability, have the permits or whatever, look at the bounties in the area, see if there are any in your area. Let's say you're in Hurston, you got two bounties out in Crusader, and you got one over in Ariel that's orbiting Hurston. Keep an eye on that guy. Keep him up. Let's say you're doing missions or you're hauling cargo or something. Keep that bounty up so you can see exactly what he's doing and where he is. Um, you know, Determine what you're planning to do, and I think STL could answer that question better than I can.
Yeah, well, and I think I want to elaborate on one thing you said too. Is it's knowing your ship and your capabilities. I think it's equally important to know what other ships' capabilities are that may be engaging you. I'd say a large number of people that are, in the PvP community right now are using things like arrows and gladiuses and buccaneers. They're really fast, really hard to hit ships. So if you're in a freighter, for example, you're not going to be able to, outturn one of those ships. You're not going to be able to prevent their flying mechanic. But the natural instinct for so many people is just to match what they're doing. They're flying this way, I'm going to fly that way. I'm going to try and follow them. Well, that's a death trap because all of a sudden they're going to turn around and get behind you, and you're not going to be able to maneuver to do anything really about it. So I think it's really important to know, like, hey, like, I know what my ship's strengths are, but it's equally important to know how I can combat what the other person is bringing to the fight. Some of the best fighter pilots out there even know, like, they can see how somebody's flying and realize what sort of control mechanism they're using, and then use that to kind of combat it. So it's an entire like holistic approach to what you're trying to combat. Now, as far as like what you're trying to do, what you're planning to do, I think when you kind of look at some of this stuff, it's like, okay, if I'm setting out to do mining, I have to be aware of what type of risks there's going to be. If I'm setting out to do cargo hauling, I need to understand what the risks are going to be. You almost need to have a game plan in mind for how you're going to avoid trouble. So, when you start talking about it really comes down to like avoiding hot spots, how you can bring friends along, how you can set rendezvous, how you can change your destination. I think when you understand what you're trying to do and where the threats are, you can come up with a game plan before you even leave, and you set yourself up for success right off the bat.
Well, and also when you're flying, let's say you're flying from, you're trying to get to Port Olisar. You're coming from Hurston. You set your course to Port Olisar. You go into quantum. As soon as you get within the outer ring of the outer orbit of the outer moon, you're in Crusader space. As soon as that message pops up on your screen, hit B and hold it, drop out of quantum early. Then you could hit F2, click set route again, and it's going to reroute you directly to Port Olisar. And in doing that, you're not having somebody waiting for you, a Crusader, to take you down.
And while and I'm sorry to talk over you a little bit, but also in that same realm, it's also about changing your quantum path, right? Like, it's not real common right now, but you do have players that are out there in the Mantis that are trying to snare you and set traps. I mean, it happens once in a blue moon, and it's kind of exciting when it actually does happen. But where are they going to sit? The common travel zones, because it's got like a 20-kilometer range. Like, you're not necessarily going to be snaring people by being at some random place in space. You, as a pirate, you have to be intelligent about where you deploy your trap, and as somebody that's playing the legitimate side of the law, you automatically have different options that are available to you to help keep you safe if you make those choices.
Correct. And two good ways of doing that is one, dropping out of quantum early, because most of the time they're going to set at your desk towards your destination because everybody's going to kind of go to the single point there. And two, another good way of doing it is if you're sitting there at Hurston, you can start your quantum toward Hurl 4, which takes you up toward the top, and then drop out of quantum before you get there, and then reset your course to Port Olisar. That's going to bring you in at a different angle. So if they're sitting there With a Mantis near Crusader, they're going to miss you completely. Also, another thing is let's say you are going to Daymar to do some mining, rock mining, or you've got a prospector going to do a little mining or something. If you drop out, as soon as you drop into, we'll use Crusader as an example again, Crusader space, as soon as you get that message up on your upper part of the screen, drop out of quantum, change your course. When you come in to Daymar as an example, if somebody, usually what they'll do is they'll go from either portals or yellow, drop out at Daymar and sit there and wait for people to come in. You're going to be nowhere near them. So it's just a good way to reset your routes and replan as you go.
And I think some of it too comes down to your ship selection, right? Like you start talking about components and you start talking about what you want to do. And I think there's a certain attraction to making the most powerful build you can. You know, military components, you want it to be strong. You want everything with the most power. You want the loudest weapons. You want everything like that. But when you're doing cargo or you're doing mining or box missions, like those sorts of things, your overall objective isn't necessarily combat. Your overall objective should probably be to avoid combat. Now, there's times when I'm doing combat and I want to be able to, or I'm doing like cargo missions and I get interdicted and I've called arms and I'm like, hey, yeah, let's get some extra money. But that doesn't necessarily play the same way when it's a real player. You know, the best pilots are way better than NPCs. So I think there's a certain appeal to running stealth on your non-combat builds. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. I mean, for most, it's I'm running stealth because I want to sneak up on a target and kill them. Well, stealth works both ways. If somebody that's out to do harm can't see you, I mean, that's invaluable in itself because then you don't have to worry about anything beyond that. Drac, I know you've probably played with stealth more than anybody I know. Like, what are your thoughts on ship choices and overall components?
Well, for example, my Freelancer Max is a full stealth build, and it saved me more times than not, especially from players. Um, I can haul my rock around, and on Daymar, for instance, and people won't see me until they get quite close. And as long as I'm not pinging actively, they're never to find me. Another time, I was picking up a load in atmosphere and I got a full load, and this was a while back, this was a couple of patches ago. I got a full load of Laranite, and somebody came after me. Knowing my ship, I know that in space they'll catch me and destroy me. I stayed in atmosphere. In atmosphere, I'm faster than they are. I stayed on the deck, I full throttle until they dropped off my radar, and then I started changing course and I climbed out and quantumed away. They never found me. So it's like I said, it goes back to knowing your ship and its capabilities. But and especially for stealth, if you get to the point where you drop off their radar, if you start changing course, they'll never find you. If you run in a straight line, they'll eventually find you if you do not keep your speed up. So, it's a lot about tactics and everything, but when you're hauling cargo, one thing you don't want to be is seen. So, pretty
Well,
much go
yeah,
ahead.
and you hit on something important there too. Is there's kind of knowing your ship, and you say I don't want to go up because I know these ships are going to beat me to space, but I know if I'm in atmosphere, it's different, right? There's that natural inclination that I'm getting engaged. I have to quantum out of here. I think when you start talking about making good decisions, it's understanding where the value is, and going straight up is a natural approach. The other one that's typically natural is turning, facing your enemy, flying at them, and flying past them. I think that's an intelligent decision, assuming you actually know what your ship is. Now, again, depending on your ship, and knowing, again, kind of the first point that we talked about is knowing your opponent's capabilities, is sometimes gaining altitude is a good thing for you, but you may not want to go straight up because they may still have range on you. So if you can gain altitude, you gain speed. If you know that your ship performs better at higher altitudes, then you're putting yourself up for success. So, I mean, I think that plays directly into that. A little bit beyond that, I'm going to hit you guys with a really obvious one here. Whatever you're doing on a landing pad, at a planetary outpost, at a major city, never leave your doors open. Close them behind you. That ramp is the single easiest way for somebody to get on your ship and exploit it. And when we've talked to some of our friends that have actually done piracy, typically what they're doing is they're waiting for a rock miner to get back on the ship when they've already smuggled on board. Well, then they kind of have you, right? Because you don't have a lot of options when you're being held captive in your own ship. So I think, it's all about understanding that, like, yes, you may be able to land, go pull a land vehicle, and then drive it into your ship, and you'll be fine. But maybe you're not. How much extra effort is it to actually close your ramp every time you get off of it? You make it a habit, and you protect yourself way more than anything else you can possibly do.
Well, here's a good example. If you are in an armistice zone, which most of these outposts are when you're pulling a land vehicle, let's say you're in an MSR. Now, if I get attacked at the MSR on the conversation earlier, I will immediately nose up and go into space because I know in space I'm faster than they are. That's just an example. For the freelancer, I stay on the deck. With the MSR, I climb immediately. But if I'm sitting on a pad with my max, I go out the side door. If I'm sitting on a pad with my MSR, going to load a land vehicle, one thing I do is I lock my hidden door, my server room door, and my engineering door. This way, when I open that ramp, if somebody smuggles on, they can't hide on the ship because they're going to be in this big open room with nothing in it, and I'll see them immediately. So you open that ramp, you load, you walk around, you look, you close your door, then you unlock your server room door and head for the bridge. But number two, always when you step on that ship of yours, you wait till you get that message that you've joined the channel for that ship. First thing you do is hit F11, then click on your ship, and you'll see if anybody's on board with you.
Exactly what I was going to say. Getting into that ship channel and seeing if you're alone or not. Because if there's somebody on board, they're going to show there.
Here's another good one. Now, we know the freelancer has a bug with locking doors. Um, our, a friend of ours got on his ship and a whole bunch of people dived on with him. And he freaked out and ended up getting himself killed and a crime stat and everything else. Here's a trick. Let's say you're at Everest Harbor. You spawn a freelancer on a pad. You run out there, you open the door, you climb on the ship, and all of a sudden, two people run on with you. What do? You immediately commit suicide. Yes, death of a spaceman is coming, but right now it's not here yet, and the freelance is broken. Commit suicide, it'll spawn you back inside the station, it'll despawn the ship, and those two people just ran on board back in the station. Also, there's one other thing I wanted to state, that if you're flying, let's say you're in a prospector, or you're in a Max or an MSR coming in, and let everybody know MSRs are one of the loudest ships in game. You can see it
Super
for
hot.
miles. It's super hot. So rock mining in an MSR is not the greatest thing. But anyway, if you're coming in to, let's say, Shubin on Daymar, I keep using the same place, but that's fine. You come flying in there and you happen to see a ship there. Throttle back, scan them, see what they're flying in. If they're flying in a combat ship, most likely they're waiting for you. If they're red, don't even throttle back. Change direction, go full burn, get out of there, quantum somewhere else, because they will be hunting you. So, if you see a ship, immediately throttle back. If they're not red, scan them, see if they're in a combat ship. If they're in a combat ship, go somewhere else.
I have one last note on this topic, and I think it's really just, be quick with what you're doing. Like, especially if you're doing cargo, right? Because you have to sit down, you have to run into a building, you have to come back out. Mining, you don't really have that same option, right? Like you have to find your stuff. It takes time. Commodities trading, it's a known amount of time. You land on a pad, you go inside, you buy your stuff, and you come out. You can't take your time. I mean, you can, but the longer you're at a destination, you are essentially at a place where more and more people are going to come, whether they're trying to do trading of their own or whether they're going to be, coming to cause harm. And even if somebody's coming here just to do trading, they have the potential of bringing somebody along that could cause you harm. So run in, bust your balls, be fast, make your trade, get in your ship, get out. Don't stay. There's no reason. Aside from just the pure logic of the faster you do things, it's more UEC per minute, which is ultimately the calculation to make money. You are essentially saving yourself from risk if you are out of there before anybody that wants to cause you harm even arrives.
Another thing I would want to mention is to always keep moving. So if you are out in space, standing still, do not just stand still. If you need to go AFK, go into cruise mode and just keep moving. If you're trying to call for a landing zone, do it while you're keeping moving.
Yeah,
Yep.
sitting still is the worst thing you could do.
Yep. I'd say about 30% of my game time is just sitting in cruise.
Yeah.
All right, let's move over to Chapter 3, Mining Safety Tips.
Basically, if you're mining, whether you're in a prospector or if you're rock mining or anything, do not sit near a quantum destination, whether it be an outpost, whether it be an OM. Do not sit anywhere near a quantum destination, because generally when people are hunting for miners, they will quantum to a destination, scan the area, and then quantum to the next destination. And that's how they find you. A little trick I do when I'm rock mining is I will land, we'll use Daymar again. I'll land somewhere like ArcCorp 141 or Shubin. I'll land there, I'll load my rock, and then I'll take off. I keep an eye on my radar scope. No ships. I'll go ahead and go high into orbit. That way I can start quantum to a destination between 2 points. Halfway through, I randomly drop out of quantum and head for the surface on the daylight side. Never mine on the dark side of a planet or a moon, because as soon as you ping, looking for, and for those of you who don't know, pinging is when you're scanning for anything, whether it be minerals, another ship, or anything like that. When you send
Which
out,
is honestly pretty counterintuitive, right? Like,
right,
well, it's not, but I mean, the common thought process is if I'm in the dark, I'm safe. But the
right,
game kind of sets you up for failure if you do that.
that is correct. If you're on the dark side of a moon or something, sometime go around to the dark side of a moon and look and just kind of scan. This is what pirates do. They will sit there in orbit and they will see that blue flash all the way down on the surface of the planet or moon. Guess that's where they're going. So they're going to come down. They're going to wait you ping again to see exactly where you are, and then you're toast. So stay on the daylight side. Drop out randomly to the surface and do your thing. And you might get caught 1 or 2% of the time. The rest of the time, you're making money. So, and like I say, if you know your ship, if you're in an MSR or freelancer, whatever, you know how to get away from them. You see someone appear on your radar, don't screw around. Kick that throttle forward and go. If you're a freelancer, stay on the deck, go full throttle, and do not gain altitude. If you're in an MSR, point that nose up, go. Quantum out when you can.
Yeah, and I'm going to use a video I did recently. I'm not going to assume everybody has seen it, but I will say it was a video where somebody tried to exploit me, whether for fun or for not. And it was a cautionary tale, is mostly the reason why I showed it, because we got out of it. And I think that kind of shows you how you can work as a team and how you can be smart and do things like that. But I made some pretty critical core mistakes there. Close to the end of the night, I wanted to just do a little mining to wind down. I'd done a lot of combat. Grabbed my prospector, went over to Yellow. Necessarily worry about being destroyed or losing cargo to the degree. No, I'm not doing cat trading or anything like that. But like a prospector load isn't the end of the world. But let's say it was. Let's say I'm a new player. What I did was I went to a aid shelter. Not typically a heavily monitored area by pirates because there's not any commodity trading happening there. Flew away about 20 kilometers and then started looking for minables. First mistake. I was by a location that could have been found easily. It's a quantum location. So I'm sitting there mining. As I went back and reviewed the video, I saw the ship approaching on my radar. I was so focused on actually breaking the rock that I didn't actually see it coming in. I think you need to make sure that you're not staying in your own little tunnel, because I think you get yourself set up for success or for failure when that happens.
Also, another thing is, and like what happened that night, I was close by and I was able to help them. So pretty much, it is a situation to where if you're mining and if you have a friend, split what money you make with them and have them stand by in a fighter. You could sit out there with your rock or whatever and be mining, or you could be in your prospector and mining away. And if somebody comes on you, he's going to be on them. Now, this is the way I see it. If I'm going over and I'm going to hunt a prospector and I see that prospector there, and then all of a sudden this fighter comes at me from a different angle, I'm going to forget all about that prospector because this guy's going to kill me. I'm going to turn on him. The moment I do that, that prospector's gone. He's going to quantum out of there as fast as he can. And then if that fighter can't quite handle the fight, he's going to try to quantum out. Guess what? I just lost out on both.
Yep.
So, it's just one of those things to where it's good to have a friend near you. It may not always work out that way, but most of the time it does.
Well, and I think the game's in an interesting place right now, too. Nobody has any idea if you're a part of a group. And we don't know if the game will eventually tell you that or not. It probably shouldn't. You can scan somebody and probably see your association to an organization. But, so somebody may just be sitting there. The general tips I gave in the video is what I did. It's buy time, wait for your support, be smart, don't get out of your ship too proactively. We kind of walked through the exercise, but I think if you understand that you have strength in numbers and allowing there to be time for your friends to get there to help you is crucial. And I think that's also why I always give the recommendation, not everybody is a social player, but you can't quantify how valuable being a part of an organization is. It's not even just about just what we're talking about here. I mean, sometimes you may land your ship wonky and you can't get into it. Well, you can have a friend come and just land their ship in an angle and use it as a ramp to get on your ship. Playing with friends makes a huge, huge difference that I think is something that is undervalued by a lot of players, especially the ones that don't play very often.
Oh, yes. There are several times when trading was good and everything, and somebody would call me up. I can't get back in my Caterpillar. It's full of Laranite. What do? I got 1.4 million on it. Hang on a second. I'd go get my, the smaller ship I had at the time, which was my ship that goes with the Carrack.
Pisces.
Pisces. Thank you. My brain just faded on me right then. And I went down and I opened my back door. He stood on the back door and I raised up underneath the Caterpillar so he could get on his ramp and get in his ship and take off. That's part of the advantages of having friends in the game.
Yep.
If you always play alone, you're going to get yourself in trouble more than not.
And you can set up beacons. You can pull people in on the general server to come help you. You can ask for help, but at the end of the day, you don't know who's coming. And until the reputation system, which we do get in 3.13, it's supposed to be a little bit more evolved. But until that's really more fleshed out, you don't know who's coming to your aid. And you may be a sitting duck allowing somebody to come and kill you. Whereas if you're using voice comms in a party in the game or a third-party system, The ability to privately have conversations with people and tell them your troubles, and then they can come and assist you, it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial.
All right, let's go with cargo safety tips.
So when it comes to cargo, I think it's really about understanding where you're going and where you need to be. And there are some planetary, you're going from an outpost to an outpost that tend to be a little bit safer, or the long haul from planet to planet, right? Like you have a lot of different types of routes. But to the point we made earlier, I think it's really about understanding where threats tend to be. The highest tier threat is probably going to be your unmonitored outposts. Think about your drug labs when that's a popular thing. Think about Tram and Myers on Cellin. Think about places where people can come and kill you and not have to worry about a crime stat. That's where you need to be especially cautious. And you can do it solo, but you probably want to fly in, scout it out before you pick up your cargo and see what's around you. If you come in and you see a ship there, just because they're green or blue doesn't necessarily mean they're friendly. It just means that they're not hostile to you at that moment. It's also important to realize that there's differences in what's monitored and what is displayed to you. Because if somebody has a crime stat, and you are at an unmonitored location, well, unless they're hostile to you, unless they've shot at you before, they're not necessarily going to show up as red because it's a free area. So you've got to know who is a potential threat, and that answer is everybody. If you don't know them and they're not playing with you, they're a threat. So it's important to be able to scan your area and understand what's around you. And then if you do decide to fill up, it goes to the point earlier about keeping moving, land, fill up, go. Beyond that, I think we also start talking about routes. And Drac had a really good comment earlier about, dropping out of quantum early, changing your direction. If you're going to be going from, we'll just use Tram and Myers since I already said it, it's at Cellin and Crusader, to Hurston, you're going to be selling at CBD. Well, that Crusader to Hurston travel path is very, very populated. People know that there's traders coming through there. So mantises or people that are just waiting at that quantum exit point could very easily be waiting for you. So there's ways to mitigate that. I think if you are, around the Crusader system, you can jump to ArcCorp. Kill your jump. You don't have to go that far. Go, 3 million kilometers, drop out, change your destination to Hurston. Your exit point at Hurston is going to be different enough where somebody could not possibly be waiting for you unless they took that same approach. You can vary how far you go before dropping out. I would say just be moving in the general direction of where you want to go because time is money. But stopping your jump and changing your trajectory to your destination impacts where you drop out, and that ensures safety to some degree.
Also, keep your throttle up. When you drop out of quantum, you want that ship to immediately start moving. There's also an issue. I've run into this. I've had my Banu Defender appear inside of a Cutlass Black, and he didn't like that too much. And that was because he jumped from Everest Harbor to OM1 on Hurston. I jumped from Everest Harbor to OM1 to go to a different destination. He just sat there waiting for a friend of his. So when I exited the jump, I had to come up inside of him. So blew his ship up. He was all upset. Not my fault. Nobody's fault on that. That's just part of the game. So always keep your throttle up, and always, if you're like you said, you're start to ArcCorp, you go so far, you drop out, change course to Hurston, you come out at Hurston, you have your throttle up, you're immediately moving. You're not immediately going to fall to the planet and crash. You're immediately moving. You can change your course and everything till you get lined up to Lorabelle, set your quantum and go without stopping the moving. If you're moving, it's less likely for them to get to you. Even if they see you, you still have enough time to get your quantum charged up, get your calibration done, and go.
Also, with that, it's tempting to avoid the jump directly to Lorville or Area 18 or wherever you're going, right? But Most of those places, when you drop out of your quantum, you're already in Armistice Zone. So your only real risk there kind of goes to the griefers, like we talked about before, that may like ram your ship or crash into your ship or something like that. So I think what you want to avoid is taking the OMs, to get around the planet to get to where you're going, because OMs are the quantum locations that we talked about earlier. They're very, very dangerous, and that's typically where operations are set up because they're points of convergence. And those are the areas that are scary to be, because that's where people that want to do you harm are potentially waiting. They're not going to just be sitting at some random place. And they're also not going to be sitting at Armistice because there's nothing they can really do. So it's a good best practice that if you arrive at the planet, go full speed like Drac mentioned, get your quantum set for the planetary base and go, because you're going to end up in safe space and you'll be fine.
That's correct. And having a scout. If you're going to haul cargo, have a scout. It's have somebody that arrives before you do, so that way they can turn around and say, "Okay, we are clear." You can always drop out of quantum anytime. So have him go into quantum, count 30 seconds, go into quantum. Or if you're afraid to sit there, head toward ArcCorp, like you were saying. He's going straight to Hurston. Drop out, change your course, then go in. You're halfway there between your dropout and Hurston. He says, "Oh my God, I got people here." Drop right out of quantum.
Yep.
It's that easy.
Well, and it's also important to know the quantum speed of your ships, because if you're going at that strategy, the fighter is not, unless it's running a X double odd or whatever the double odd is,
VK double odd.
BK double odd. Your bigger ship is probably going to be faster, so you don't want to overtake your scout. So be intelligent about the timing on it, because you're not going to be jumping at the same time. I also think that scouts are valuable, but you can also do it as part of a commodity team. If you've got two caterpillars that are running operations, it may not be as valuable as having a combat ship that's ready to help you, but it's at least somebody that can give you a report of what's happening in the area. So, let's use Tram Myers again. It's a hot spot. You have a caterpillar that's filling up with diamonds there. If you're approaching, ask them, hey, is there anything happening right there? Are you experiencing trouble? No? Okay, I'm on arrival. You're departing. You have a report of what's happening. Could a threat arrive after they do? Yes, but it's better than going in blind, and that just reinforces the team play aspect of the game.
That also reinforces, get into an organization, because, it's nothing like having people in real voice time, voice contact, stating what's going on and where. You get on, you do a group launch onto a server, and you can have so much fun, because if one person's having trouble, he goes, "Oh my God, I'm being attacked. This is where I am." Guess what's going to happen? You're going to have 3 or 4 people at least coming and converging on you to help you.
Yep. That's emergent gameplay, and that's where friends are very helpful.
All right, let's move on. So you have been caught and somebody is chasing you. Now what?
Well, it all depends on what you're flying, but the general rule is
and where you are.
right, and where you are. If you're in space already, don't try to set a route. Just spool up your quantum immediately, go full throttle. If you're in something like a caterpillar, don't try to maneuver. Don't try to do anything. Go in a straight line, full throttle. With my freelancer, I do the same thing, full throttle. Uh, but what I do is something a little different. That V key, Victor, V is in Victor. You hit that, you decouple. Guess what happens? You're already at max speed. You cut your throttle back. You can point anywhere you want without slowing down or changing direction of flight. Point to do it. Let's say you're flying along and microtext at 90 degrees to your left. You can turn that ship 90 degrees. You can calibrate and then hit your quantum, and they may have a general idea which direction you went, but they don't know. They don't know if you went to Mike L1. They don't know if you went to Her L4, or they don't know if you went to Microtech, because they're not flying. They're flying in a different direction. So all they see is when they got you under radar, is they can see which direction your ship is generally pointing. But most people don't even look at that. You just disappear in front of them. So they're immediately going to quantum the direction you were flying, and they're going to go be on the totally opposite end of the solar system.
Yep, and that's the tunnel vision I talked about that I fell into earlier. Most people are so focused on your pip as they're approaching you that they're not really watching the target selector to see what direction you're facing. And even with that and the HUD elements, most people aren't going to be able to calculate where you went because there's so many different quantum locations in the verse to go to.
Also, remember, even while you're in quantum, hit that V again. Because if you get down into gravity and you're decoupled, you're going to fall out of the sky.
Yep. Also, don't forget about the power of chaff or noise now that it's called. You know, if you are being targeted by people, you can pop noise, and a lot of times you will drop off of their radar while the systems are jammed. Remember, they're scanning for your EM, but there's all these little metal flakes out there that are really throwing things off. It's also going to impact your cross-section signature. So typically, while you may have a limited number of those, choosing the right countermeasure at the right time can help you disappear long enough to make a move to get out of there. And you may need to pop 2, 3, 4 of them. And while you may only have 5, if it lets you make a move to jump out, worth it. They're not expensive. You just have a limited number of them. So taking advantage of your ship's technology to get you out of town is going to be very helpful.
All right, let's go to Chapter 6, when you should report and protect yourself from false reports.
You hit that print screen. Boop, you got a picture. You go in your Star Citizen directory under screenshots. It's there. Look at the clock. What time is it? Your time zone. Then all you do is you just tell them, you fill out a report, tell them what happened, load that picture, and tell them exactly the time it happened. And they're not going to answer you, or if they do answer you, they'll say, well, we can't tell you what we're going to do or anything like that, which is fine. The point is you made the report. That is just an example. There's many ways you can do it. You could, if you're capturing video or something like that, make a ticket. Don't make a ticket just because somebody killed you. But if you're going out and you're trying to get into a ship, let's say you're at Port Olisar, and somebody pad rams you. Okay, you respawn inside, you go out, you pull another ship, you go back out, and they pad ram you again. That's when you start needing to make a report. That's griefing. That's not right. And the more reports we make, the more CIG can actually see what's going on. Now they've got logs of everything that happens in the game. Problem is are you going to sit there for 30 hours trying to read one day's logs? Not going to happen. So make your report, bring it to their attention, give them a timestamp, what time zone you're in. They're going to go to that server, those logs, and take a look.
Yeah, I think it's also important to understand what constitutes griefing in CIG's mind, right? Like, it's not, you get killed, like you're engaged in combat, like let's say you're on a 325, a Hornet shows up and you guys fight and you get killed. It's not a griefer. CIG doesn't think it's a griefer. It's not a griefer. Like, a combat ship and a combat ship, like, it is what it is. You could even argue that a prospector being killed by that same Hornet is probably not a griefer. I mean, now, if they keep coming after the same player, and it's just random, well, that borders on griefing, But I think it's also important to understand the responsibility of the miner or the trader. If you keep coming to the same spot where somebody's wanting to do PvP and starts killing you over and over again, I mean, that's kind of on you too. Like, you have to learn, you have to adapt, you have to make good decisions. Legitimate griefing, pad ramming, exploiting, that's the key word, exploiting game bugs to end you, sneaking onto your ship through, like, glitching onto your ship. Like, not because you left the ramp down, but if there's a hole in the armor or something and they're able to sneak on your ship, the freelancers were notable for that for a long time. That's where griefing starts to become a thing. So I think the key there is understanding what CIG sees as a problem and then understanding your reporting mechanisms to do that. And a lot of that's going to be through the feedback forms online, but you need evidence for a lot of it because, to Drac's point, it is challenging to dig through a lot of game code. It's challenging to look at game logs. It's challenging to do these types of things. Now, if players get reports, then the community may speak louder than the game files or the time that it would take to actually do that. So I think it's really look at what is actually crappy behavior, and then if you have an issue with it, report it, but supply evidence, screenshots. Anybody that's got an NVIDIA game card has NVIDIA Share available, which has the old school shadow play as part of that. It's easy to capture footage these days. And aside from, showing your friends cool things that you're doing, you can empower yourself to report people that are having a negative impact on the community. At the end of the day, though, it's important to understand pirates are important. You may not like pirates, you may not agree with piracy, but from the sake of the game, and not just this game, Elite Dangerous and other space games, and even non-space games, pirates are important, and they fill a niche in the game that needs to be there. So you need to understand that you may not like what they're doing to you, but it's a legitimate tactic. And that's where learning how to deal with them is important. If the game didn't have pirates in PC or or PvP, the game this place would be boring. It may as well be a single player game because you don't need support. You don't need friends. You're just going to go do your thing. So understand, it's a part of the game. It has to be there. It's there by design. Just know how to recognize it because that's what's important.
I think the big problem right now is there is real no gameplay loop for true piracy. So a lot of the piracy does border on griefing, but at the same time, there are certain things we're going to have to deal with some of this stuff, and that's fine. Um, the key behind this is understanding that if you're being targeted by one person or one group of people, no matter where you go, they're hunting you down, killing you time and time and time again. That is player harassment. That is griefing. That's when you need to record it, take screenshots, whatever, and most of all, give a timestamp with your time zone in that ticket because they're not going to necessarily go off of what you supply them. They're going to first thing they're going to do is they're going to go to those logs and see what the hell's going on. And if they see these guys and they start going back in the logs from the time you say this happened, and they see that they've hit you several times and everything, guess what's going to happen? They're either going to get warnings or they're going to get banned. So, evidence is always there in the game. Most important, if you get screenshots, video, do it. If you can't, at least give a timestamp with your time zone. That's the key.
Yep. And then I think two final notes here is pad ramming is irrefutably griefing. If somebody pad rams you, to Drac's point, multiple times, or you see that they're doing it to multiple ships and you see it in chat, that is griefing. It's not supposed to happen, but it happens. You need to report that. Or you at least need to understand that it is not considered a sanctioned gameplay loop. So that is something that is, one, if you are a player in the verse and somebody pisses you off, don't pad ram because CAG does see that as a griefing experience. Beyond that, Drac already mentioned, talking about reporting people that are doing like racist comments and stuff. Toxicity in chat is a serious problem to some degree. If you are killed and somebody puts a dick and balls in your in chat, like happened in my video that I referenced earlier, chances are it's a little griefy. It may not necessarily be griefy, but it's probably an indicator that it's griefy. Somebody that's sitting there taunting other players falls in line with being a significant issue because it's not necessarily It's more of an indication of behavior of driver, so I think when it comes down to, if you are going to do PvP and you don't want to get into that gray area of griefing, GF, good fight. It's the general sign of people that are in a gentleman's agreement, or at least recognize skill, or at least recognize that this was a legitimate gameplay. Toxicity, salt, those types of things, like, frame what's happening in your experience. If you do something that it borders on crappy, and then you have a crappy response to it in chat, it paints you to be a pretty bad guy. So take that up. Be a gentleman. Have that gentleman's agreement. Engage with people that want to engage with you, and don't just go out and be a dick because you can.
On a final note, for me anyway, I think that basically, if you're new to the game, I think a good idea would be, before you get in and you say, well, how do I spawn my ship? What's a hangar? How do I get out of the hangar? Things of that sort. Get into YouTube and look it up, because there are tutorials that will help you. You wouldn't believe. Many, many, many videos. Spend a couple hours. Check these videos out. You'll learn more than you realize.
Yeah, check STLYoungblood's channel. He has a lot more videos than I do.
Well, also, when you're asking for a lot of help in general chat, you are also setting yourself up as a noob. And the griefers, and to some extent the pirates, are looking for those that don't know what they're doing. So if you're asking very basic questions in chat, you are going to be setting yourself up for, and probably unknowingly giving away your location to a degree that allows people that want to do you harm easy access to you.
By the end of the day, just have fun. It's a game. Don't take it into your personal life.
That's a good call out. I've gotten frustrated with this game. I've never gotten mad with this game.
I think I've gotten frustrated with the game. I've only gotten mad at people.
Alright, I guess that does it. Thank you, STLYoungblood, and thank you, Drac.
Happy to help.
Anytime.